Hi there, my name is Shelby. Welcome back to my channel. How are you all today? Today we're going to be talking about my favorite books that I read over the past year in 2020. I thought this would be a really good way to kind of introduce you all to the types of books that I like to read. For the most part, I read romance. I'd say about at least 75% of the books that I read last year were romance books, but they aren't all necessarily my top favorite books that I read over the past year. So let's get into the video. Okie dokie, so let's get started. And these aren't in any particular order. These are just my top favorite books. I think all of these I gave 5 stars over the last year. I don't really have like a favorite per se. These are all just in my list of favorites. I think I've got about about 10 books that I'm going to be talking to you about. So like I said, no particular order. The first one that I have here, if you can see it on here with the lights, is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This has gotten a lot of hype. I'm sure lots of you have heard of this book. Lots of booktubers have been talking about this book, and it lives up to the hype. So this book is kind of what the name implies, is about a rock band from 60s, 70s era called Daisy Jones and the Six, and this is about how they formed their band, how, you know, the rise of the band, and then also kind of the fall and how they broke up. The interesting thing about this book is that it's told in interview format. So I would suggest listening to it on audiobook. That's how I consumed or read this book, was with the audiobook, and I really enjoyed the audiobook because it had a full cast of characters, or full cast doing all the voices for the characters, and they really just brought the characters to life. That's something that I really liked about this book too, and especially with Taylor Jenkins Reid, this is my second book that I've read from her, and she just has a way of making her characters, they're just so realistic. They're so incredibly flawed. Like Daisy Jones, for instance, there were times in this book that she would do something and I would absolutely hate her for it, but at the same time I loved her, and that's how she is with most of the characters in this book, and I just loved the emotion and the depth of everything that happens. Yeah, so this was it was such an enjoyable read. It's such a good book. I will most likely read this time and time again. If I get bored and need something to listen to, I'll probably listen to the audiobook again. This is just a great book. Okay, and then the next one is kind of actually 3 books together, but they're all in a series, so I'm just gonna all talk about them all at once, and that is gonna be Heartstopper. So I have Heartstopper Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. So this is, I'll just hold up the first one. So this is by Oseman, and it is a graphic novel, and it's really quick. This is another book that's gotten a lot of hype that I've heard lots of booktubers talking about over the past year, and that's kind of where I got the idea of reading these books. It's just because it's so sweet. This is about 2 boys, Nick and Charlie, and it's kind of their relationship. So they kind of start out when they meet, they form a friendship, and then throughout the series it becomes maybe a little bit more, and it's just so cute and just so heartwarming. These two are just so precious. I love them so much. This is a great book series if you just want a good time, something that's gonna make you just really happy, and it's really quick and easy to get through. And I'm pretty sure there's another one coming out maybe this year that I can't wait to get my hands on too. So there's that. The next book that I'm going to talk about is a chunker. It's going to be House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I am a really big Sarah J. Maas fan. I read A Court of Thorns and Roses in that series, and it's probably my all-time favorite book series. I did also try to read her first series that she wrote. What is it called? Throne of Glass. And it's just, I don't know. I only read like the first couple of books in that series. I haven't gotten through all of it. I'd like to finish it, but it just hasn't happened yet. But anyway, this book is so good. I love it so much. This one is this is a urban fantasy story. It takes place in the Crescent City, and it's kind of like a modern day fantasy. So this is about this girl. Her name is Bryce, and I believe she's like half fae, if I remember right. And her best friend gets murdered. So she gets tasked with working with this angel named Hunt, and he is enslaved to the archangels, who are like the governing, ruling body of this city. So they're joined together, and they're tasked with trying to solve her best friend's murder, because then there are also some other murders that take place. So they're trying to figure out what happened to her friend. And there's a lot of other things that go on in this book. There's some political things that happen. There's kind of a little bit of a love-hate kind of story between Bryce and Hunt. It was fantastic. I am dying for the next one to come out, which is not going to be this year, I don't think. Maybe next year, hopefully. I can't wait. I'm so excited. This is so good. Okay, so the next book that I read, and this is probably going to hurt my arm to hold up, is Saga. So I have this is a big like compendium book kind of thing, and it's by Brian K. Vaughn is the guy who wrote this, and then the art is by Fiona Staples. So again, this is another graphic novel that I read, and I've heard so many good things about this, so this is why I picked this one up. And this is kind of this is about two people. This is like a sci-fi novel, or what am I trying to say here? A sci-fi graphic novel between these two different like races, species that have been at war with each other for years and years and years and years. So there's this girl from one species and this guy from another species, and they meet and they're enemies, but they fall in love. And the first little bit from this book is they have a baby together, which is a huge no-no. So they're both, along with their child, are on the run, because both sides view, you're with the enemy and you made this child and it's blasphemous. So they are running away from bounty hunters, people trying to kill them. And it's just so good. Their relationship is so sweet and loving, and I love them so much, and they just want to be together. It's just so great. And then I have my little book here. with notes for all the other books. So the other books that I have, I don't own physical copies of. I read them either on my Kindle app on my phone, or I listened to them on audiobook. So the next one I have, oh, and I'll just put up like over here in the space pictures of these books so you know what they are. So the first one is going to be The Wallflower Wager by Tessa. This was one of my first. The series is part of, it's part of the Girl Meets Duke series. So I read this series beginning of end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. This was my first kind of delve into historical romance genre, and Tessa is such a great start if you're wanting to if you're interested a little bit in historical romance. This is a great series to dive into. So The Wallflower Wager is the third book of this series, and it's about these two people. So it's about Penelope is the girl, and I don't know if she's like an heiress something or other, and she is such a sweetheart. She rescues animals that have like hurt themselves or about to be kicked out of their homes or whatnot. So she rescues all these animals, and they're not like your everyday kind of animals like cats, dogs, pigeons, or whatnot. I'm pretty sure she has like a hedgehog. I think there might be a goat, if I'm remembering right, a goat or a pig, something like that. They're just a smorgasbord, all kinds of animals. She fixes them up, and then she's just got all of these animals at her house. So the hero of this story is, I remember what his name, Gabriel, and he is this up-and-coming really rich guy. He buys the house next door to hers, and he does this thing. It's almost like fixer-upper with his house, like houses that he buys. He buys a house, kind of fixes up really cheap, and then sells it for an extravagant amount of money. So he's wanting to do this with this house that he bought next door to Penelope, but he knows he can't sell it with all these animals next door. So he says, you have to get rid of all these animals. And so she's like, okay, I'll get rid of them, but you have to help me find homes for them. So he's like, yeah, fine, that's whatever, I'll do it as long as you get rid of the animals so that I can sell this house. So that's what they do, and they kind of have a romance, and it's so great. I loved it so much. This was just book made me so happy. I really, really loved it. Let's see here. The next book that I'm going to talk about is another romance. It's a dark romance, so kind of keep that in mind. It is Welcome to the Dark Side by Giana Darling. This is the second book in her Fallen Men series. This is an MC romance. This is about the president of the MC Motorcycle Club and this high school teenage girl. So it is an age gap. Like I said, it is a dark romance, and they kind of get together because when this girl was a little girl, she is in the middle of this like gunfight, and the president, main character's name is Zeus, he rescues her and saves her life. So they kind of formed a relationship. She has kind of an attachment to him since he saved her life. And she like writes letters to him, and they just kind of form a bond over the years. Fast forward a little bit, I think she's like a senior in high school. I could be wrong about that. I know she's in high school, but she gets cancer. So she decides, and she's kind of seen as like the good girl. She does what she's told. even if it's not necessarily what she wants to do. So she's got cancer and she kind of decides, I'm going to do what I want now, and she gets with Zeus to kind of show her the dark side of life. And I don't want to say too much more, just in case you want to read it, because it's so good. I highly recommend it. I haven't read anything else in this series, which I'm really bummed about because I need to. I plan to, I'm just getting around to it. But this was just so good. Zeus's love for her is just so sweet. And everybody's trying to like keep them apart because it's taboo, because he's like 20, 30 years older than her and she's in high school. But it's just, he loves her so much and he's so caring for her, and this just broke my heart. I cried. It made me happy and laugh. It's just so good. I'm probably gonna say it's just so good about literally every single one of these books, so I'm sorry. The next book that I read, that's one of my top books of last year, was Dark Notes by Pam Godwin. I think this was my first Pam Godwin book. This is another darker romance. This was a teacher-student romance, so if you're not a big fan of that, just kind of, it is what it is. This is about this girl, and she's from a really, really poor family, but she's kind of like a musical prodigy per se with piano, and she's able to go to this really elite high school, and her whole like ambition is to try to get into like a really nice fancy college to play piano. So this is her and her relationship with her piano teacher at school, and it's really taboo. They start to form like a love sexual kind of romance or relationship. It does also feature BDSM, so like I said, it is dark, but it's so good. It's so good. I loved it. It was great. The next two that I'm going to talk about are part of a series. It's Torn by Carian, and then the second book of the series is Tied by Carian. So Torn is another taboo dark romance. It's kind of a, what trope would this be? It's a like father's best friend romance, or best friend's daughter, whichever way you want to look at it. This is about this girl, and again, she's like high school, maybe she's just starting to get out of high school. I can't really remember how old she is. And her father's best friend, who I'm pretty sure also happens to be her godfather, and they kind of form a romantic relationship. It's really sexy, really taboo. It was great. And I really enjoyed this one. I read a lot of like father's best friend romances. I really liked this one because it seemed more realistic than a lot of the other ones that I've read. There's consequences to them getting together, like when her father finds out about it and he's so mad, which is what would be expected in this kind of scenario. So I really enjoyed that she made it more realistic, that there were consequences. It wasn't just, oh, they get together but they're in love so everybody's okay with it. Well, no, not everybody would be okay with that in the real world. So I really like that one. And then the second one, Tied, I might like it just a tad more than the first one. But Tied is about the brother of the guy from the first book, and he is kind of a recluse. I don't remember what happened to him to make him be that way. I know people are just like scared of him for whatever reason. like I said, I can't remember the specifics of it, but he lives like out in the woods in his home by himself because nobody likes him. Everybody thinks he's really scary. But he ends up stumbling upon and rescuing this girl who had been kidnapped when she was 5 years old. And he just finds her in the woods and saves her life. And she's like a teenager when he rescues her. So this can be a hard book to read. There's not a whole lot of like graphic elements from her past as a child. She did get abused, obviously, when she was kidnapped. I believe she was also sexually assaulted. I could be wrong on that. It's been a while since I read this, but it doesn't dwell on those things. It's more about her after being rescued and her just trying to deal with what happened to her and try to move on from it. And so she doesn't understand like society because she was basically by herself sometimes with this kidnapper. She didn't really have any other interactions with anybody. She wasn't taught, she didn't go to school. So when she gets rescued, her parents find her, but it was very traumatizing to them, and they just want to kind of pretend that it didn't happen. It is somewhat their way of coping with it, but she's just like, I can't, that's not how I can cope with it. So the only person that she can connect with is the guy that rescued her, even though everybody in society in this town is like, he's, not good, you should stay away from him. But she's like, he saved me. It's just, it's so good. I loved it so much. I am dying. I think there's other brothers in this family. I'm dying. I really want there to be another book in this series, but there's nothing like on Carian Cole's website about the possibility of being more books in the series. I'm hoping there will be though, because both of these books were so good. I need to read more Carian Cole because it was so good. Okay, and then the last one that I'm going to talk about was an autobiography. It's Becoming by Michelle Obama. I listened to this on audiobook because I thought it would be great because Michelle Obama narrates her story. I don't really know, there's not too much to say about this one. Like I said, it's an autobiography. This is just Michelle Obama's life up to, meeting Barack Obama and them getting together, and then all the way through his presidency and to the end of his presidency is where the book ends. And it was just so good. I love Michelle Obama so much. She's just like the perfect human being. I admire her, and I just loved this book. I loved hearing more about her background and where she kind of comes from with her beliefs and what she was raised on. I loved kind of seeing how she and Barack met and their love story, because they're just like the best couple ever. And how, he became president and how she just kind of supported him, although not all the time. They're great. I loved it so much. So there you go. So that is, I guess, my top 10, sort of 10. I mean, there's more than 10 because there's 3 volumes for Heartstopper, but those were the top books that I read in 2020. So I really hope you enjoyed this. Thanks.